Mahalo. This is the step-by-step tutorial in how to enact Sandbox Mode. And if you don't know what Sandbox Mode is, I highly recommend that you check out the video that's hopefully linked above me right here, because a lot of love and effort has been put into the storytelling and the editing of that video, and it'll go through very simply what Sandbox Mode is and the amazing things that it can achieve for the game of YuGiOh. I should also say right here that because of the banning of Isolde Two Tails the Noble Knights, the combos I'm about to explain aren't currently available to us playing in advanced format. But if you're the sort of person that wants to see the step-by-step process as it's been enacted over the past 3-4 years, and also maybe be trying to look for what the next type of Sandbox Mode deck could be, then stay tuned, because I have an exact step-by-step process for 3 different editions, I guess, of a Sandbox Mode deck. Let's get started. What I'm going to demonstrate for you today is basically the most straightforward route to achieving Sandbox Mode. Now, you're not going to be able to play exactly like this with every starting hand, but thanks to the inbuilt contingency that's within the deck, at some point with most starting hands you should be able to get somewhere on this route. The start of the route is 2 warrior monsters. You're going to need to try and get those on the field, and with this starting hand we're able to do that in many different ways. I think what I actually do is special summon out the junk forward and then special summon out Fireflint Lady because I've got a warrior monster on the field. We've got our 2 warriors. That lets us link summon Isolde Two Tails of the Noble Knights. Now, this card's first effect lets you add a warrior monster from your deck to your hand, and this is actually the effect that you're most able to ignore, because this card can't be used thanks to the kind of condition of Isolde. You can't normal summon it and you can't use its effects. And so really, this monster is basically there as discard fodder, and you're going to not want to pick any card that you're going to use in a later part of this combo. So that's why I've gone for Silent Boots. The second effect is the real reason why Isolde's been banned, because it lets you send equip spells from your deck to the graveyard and special summon out a warrior monster whose level is equal to the number of equip spells that you send. For this combo, you're going to be wanting to send 4 equip spells to allow you to summon Armageddon Knight straight from the deck. And of those equip spells, it's really crucial that Divine Sword Phoenix Blade ends up in the graveyard, and it's also really nice if Sword of Sparkles and Cursed Bamboo Sword end up in the grave. Now, if Cursed Bamboo Sword ends up in the grave, that lets you add a copy of Broken Bamboo Sword from your deck to your hand. And this again will be a card that is used for discard fodder. Now we can go on to the effect of Armageddon Knight. So when it's summoned, we can send a dark monster from our deck to the graveyard. And the dark monster we're going to be sending is Destrudo, the Lost Dragon's Frisson. So this card can revive itself from the graveyard by paying half your life points. And its level will also decrease by the level of a monster on your field. And so it becomes a level 3 tuner, which you can then use to synchro summon out a level 7 Power Tool Dragon. Now, Power Tool Dragon, as we can see in this corner, lets you reveal 3 equip spells from your deck and add 1 of them to your hand. And if you pick all 3 copies of DDR, you're guaranteed to get 1 of them to go to your hand. DDR lets you discard a card from your hand to revive a banished monster. Now, in order to banish monsters, we're going to be using the effect of the Phoenix Blade. So this lets you banish 2 warrior monsters to add the Phoenix Blade to your hand. And so we're going to banish a copy of Armageddon Knight and 1 of the materials used to make Isolde, add it back to our hand, but we're going to then use it to pay the discard cost for DDR to then revive back the Armageddon Knight. And so we can reuse this effect of sending a dark monster from our deck to the graveyard. The dark monster we're going to send this second time is Blackwing Zephyros the Elite. So when Zephyros is in the grave, you can bounce a card from the field to your hand to special summon it. And the card you're going to be wanting to bounce is the equip spell DDR. And that will of course send the Armageddon Knight back to the graveyard. I think, yeah, there's a 400 life point cost as well as part of that. So, now we can reuse that Effector Divine Sword Phoenix Blade, banish the Armageddon Knight and the second material used to summon a soldier, to bring the Divine Sword back to our hand. But in this instance, what we're not going to do is use it as the discard for the DDR. What you're going to be doing is discarding one of your monsters. Now, for this replay, I'm going to send Torn Scales to the graveyard, but it doesn't actually really matter. If you happened to not draw any other monsters in your starting hand, you will have a warrior thanks to the first effect of a Soldier. So you always have a warrior to discard at this point. That lets you revive the Armageddon Knight for the third and final time, and send a copy of Summoner Monk, in this instance from your deck, to the graveyard. Your next move is to use those two level 4 monsters, the Blackwing and the Armageddon Knight, to Xyz summon out number 60 Jugarist the Timeless. And we're going to use this card's second effect, which will allow you to special summon a monster from your graveyard by skipping your next main phase 1. So we'll send those materials and we'll bring back Summoner Monk. And now we're entering kind of a new phase of the game where the aim is to try and special summon level 4 monsters. One of the easiest to summon is by getting rid of the Synchro and the Xyz that are already on the field. We can bring out Elder Entity and Tess, which you'll know if you've seen the previous video is inherently in the deck as part of the Sandbox Mode. So this card's really easy to play, plus it gives you the opportunity to special summon a level 4 from your hand if you happen to have one. In this instance we don't, but that's okay because we have Summoner Monk. So Summoner Monk lets you discard a spell card in order to special summon a warrior, any level 4 monster from your deck to the field. So we're going to bring out Gozuki in this instance, and Gozuki lets you send a zombie monster from your deck to the graveyard, and we're going to pick Plague Spreader Zombie. So, your next move is to summon Selene, the Queen of Master Magicians. Now, this is key for many reasons. Firstly, this card's a Link 3, which is really important later on in the combo. And secondly, it allows you to reset the Summoner Monk, because you use Summoner Monk as part of the conditions in order to summon her. But then Selene's effect lets you revive it straight back from the graveyard. And because Summoner Monk isn't a hard once per turn effect, this new Summoner Monk comes back refreshed and able to enact the special summon effect again. What we're going to do in this instance is we're going to use the effect of Plague Spreader Zombie, which gives us a kind of free special summon from the graveyard by putting a card from our hand back into the deck. And then we're going to discard Broken Bamboo Sword to special summon out another level 4 from our deck. I've picked Summoner Monk here, but it doesn't actually have to be a Summoner Monk, it can be any level 4. Now, we're going to, here, we've got a Plague Spreader Zombie, that's not level 4, so we really need to convert that. So we're going to use a second copy of Selene, and that will allow us to bring back the Summoner Monk again, and give us an option for whichever level 4 monster we want in the deck. Now, you might be thinking, oh, which card are you going to discard? Are you going to discard Cool By? No, the card we're going to discard is the Divine Sword Phoenix Blade, and we're going to get it back to our hand by banishing the Armageddon Knight and the Isolde. So this can all be achieved basically regardless of what starting hand you have, as long as you can bring out the Isolde. So now we've got the spell card, we have the capacity to use Summoner Monk's effect once again, and this time we're going to bring out the all-important Rescue Ferret. So if you've seen combos like this before, you'll know how good Rescue Ferret is, and we'll get into that shortly. For now, what we're going to do is we're going to Xyz summon using all of our level 4 monsters that aren't Rescue Ferret, and we're going to Xyz summon the Pre-Mathmech Alambertian. Now, Alambertian has this wonderful effect. If you use 4 materials, you can search for any spell card in the deck and add it to your hand. So this is where we actually branch off between the in-real-life deck and the online-only deck. What I'm going to demonstrate for you here is the in-real-life deck, and we'll get into why that is in a little bit. So if you're playing with this deck, the spell card that you're going to be wanting to add by getting rid of all 4 of those materials is Insect Imitation. Now, actually, the pre-math mech in this instance is now in the way, so you're going to try and destroy it. And there's 2 methods of doing that. One is actually, as part of this effect, you've sent Tess to the graveyard. When she's sent, you can destroy a card on the field. Or you can use the Sword of Sparkles effect to tribute your pre-math mech, and that will send this sword back into your deck. Now, that is the preferred option if you're doing the online combo, and if you're doing the in real life combo, it doesn't really matter because you're pretty much home and dry at this point already. In this instance, just for completeness, I do it anyway. I'll use the Sword of Sparkles effect, tribute the pre-math mech, and add it back into the deck. So, I didn't talk too much about Rescue Ferret's effect. So, this lets you special summon monsters up to level 6 to a zone a link monster points to. And so that's why important that we have the Selene as well, because all of her arrows point downwards. We've got 3 options to summon monsters of levels which equal 6. And so we're going to summon 3 monsters from the deck. And so this is a really nice way of summoning what is otherwise some really random monsters. Now for this combo, you're going to be adding Vylon Cube, Doppel Warrior, and Effect Veiler. Now, the 1-star here is actually not relevant at all. You can pick any 1-star, so you might play Squeak Knight, for example, which should be in the deck because you're playing Sublimation. Really, the only key card is Vylon Cube. The Vylon Cube, when it's synchro summoned, or when it's used as a synchro summon for a light monster, lets you add an equip spell from your deck to your hand. And so what you can do is tribute off Doppel Warrior and itself to summon Denglong, first of the Yang Zing. And again, this isn't actually really relevant for its effect, it's only relevant for its attribute. That lets you add Telekinetic Charging Cell from your deck to your hand, and you can see maybe where this is now going. Now you'll use the effect of Insect Imitation, tribute off whatever level 1 you've played. That lets you summon Gale Dogra from the deck. And now you've got 2 monsters left on the field. You can summon out the Reaprodocus to then turn the Gale Dogra into a Psychic type monster to allow you to play the Telekinetic Charging Cell and complete Sandbox Mode. Except there's a problem, because you've still got 38 cards left in the deck. And that's fine in terms of, yeah, you can use Sandbox Mode quite easily to draw all those cards. And if you've seen the first video, then I've gone through the combo there. But basically what you've been able to achieve here is being able to mill cards from your extra deck without any cost whatsoever. And one of them is Herald of Arclight, which lets you search for ritual spells and ritual cards. And we've also got Psy-Frame Lord Omega, which lets you put the Herald of Arclight back into the deck. Or into the extra deck. You can keep using this effect, search for ritual cards, and eventually you can play Megalith Ock to basically draw 1 card per turn. And if I've probably explained that much better in the first video, so go and watch that if you're still unsure. But here, so you've still got 36 cards to draw, and each one of these rotations, so basically to enact this loop, it's going to take you about a minute to a minute and a half. And so if you're doing that 36 times, that's bordering on an hour, and that's purely to draw all the cards in your deck. That's not necessarily to do any kind of shenanigans involving summoning Zushin, summoning monsters, repeating the effects of Monster Reborn and whatnot. So that duel is just going to take so long. And with kind of online simulators like Dueling Nexus, often the server goes down basically after, periods of time. Plus, it's a long time to be spent clicking exact combos. You're going to be there for hours and hours. And so for a small hit in consistency, what you can do is change the combo ever so slightly to give you more of a chance of achieving this combo by drawing all of the cards in your deck, then enacting Sandbox Mode, and that way you can really speed up the process. It still takes a while, don't get me wrong, but you can make it more achievable in terms of essentially getting the replays that you want.
Start the game already.
So this time I'm going to be running through with you the combo that I'd be using for an online version of Sandbox Mode. So this uses a smaller deck. In fact, in this example, I'm using a 40 card deck. And that means a loss to consistency, but what we lose in consistency, we gain in speed. And we'll also gain in speed through this slightly different combo. And you'll see the setup at one stage of the duel is very similar to that of the first combo. We've got our 4 level 4 monsters, we've got Rescue Ferret, and we've got Celine. And we'll once again be going into the pre-math mech Alambertian. However, instead of going for insect imitation with its effect, what we're going to be doing is going for spell card De-Synchro. And again, we're not going to be using Intessa's effect, we're going to be using the Sword of Sparkles to put that back into the deck, and that is actually most important in this combo, because what you're going to be doing with Rescue Ferret is summoning 3 very specific monsters: Tuningware, Pylon Cube, and Magicat. And with these 3 creatures, you're going to be synchro summoning into Virgil, the Rockstar of Burning Abyss. Now, this being a light level 6 synchro means that you trigger all the effects because it's also a spellcaster. And so you get to draw 1 with Tuningware, and then with Magicat, because it's being sent to the graveyard for a synchro, you can add a spell card from your graveyard to the top of your deck. And so basically, because with those 2, you're just adding a spell card straight into your hand, and you can see with De-Synchro how you can then create a loop. And with Pylon Cube, you can add an equip spell from your deck to your hand. And what we're going to be doing is using those equip spells to search for ways in order to summon another synchro monster to help us draw through all the cards in our deck. Now, for the chain here, you're going to be wanting to go, it's really important that you go Tuningware, then Magicat, then Pylon Cube. So that way you get the order of cards exactly as you want them. In this instance, we're actually going to add DDR, our best revival card, and then go into Pylon Cube for, let's say, another copy of DDR. Now, the synchro monster that we are aiming for to summon alongside Virgil, and I'm sure you'll know this, is TG Hyper Librarian. So every time we perform this loop, we get to draw 1 additional card. Now, TG Hyper Librarian is a 5-star, so we're going to need to be able to make that, and it just so happens that our combo has inherently, and people might say slightly clunkily, but it has the Plague Spreader Zombie within it. And so this is one of the reasons why we're mainly playing 3-star warriors, or at least we're using starters, 1-card starters that involve 3-star warriors in the form of Sublimation Knight and the Neospatian Aquadolphin that's summoned from Neospace Connector. So we'll have a 3-star available for us. Now, in this instance of the playthrough, Plague Spreader Zombie is actually in my graveyard. Sometimes it can end up being in the Banish Zone, and that's why it's good to get those 2 DDR. And I will just go through with you this loop, just to show it works. So we'll De-Synchro Virgil, we'll re-summon out all of our synchro materials, and then we'll go back into Virgil. We'll trigger Tuningware, we'll trigger Magicat first to get back the De-Synchro, and then we'll go Pylon Cube into, let's say, Sword of Sparkles, because this is the reason why we put it back into the deck. Because depending on how you've started, you might not have many equipped spells in here to act as discard fodder for your copies of DDR to allow you to bring back the cards to play the Librarian. And now we have those possibilities. So what we're going to do is we're going to use 1 DDR, and we'll ditch Neospace Connector, we might as well, for the Aquadolphin. And, you know, maybe if the Plague Spreader was in the Banish, we'd used this DDR on the Sword of Sparkles, problem solved. Now we can simply use the Plague Spreader Zombie and put that Sword of Sparkles back onto our deck. And now we have the capacity to summon TG Hyper Librarian. And so, we'll use Desynchro on the Virgil, summon all of the materials, and bring it back. And now we trigger both the Tuning Ware and the Hyper Librarian, and the Magicat, and the Violon Cube, as long as we have equipped spells in the deck. And these equipped spells are kind of now bonus. And we've drawn our extra card in Fireflint Lady. And so basically you just repeat this process of desynchro and synchro until you've got no cards left in the deck. And this is much quicker than using the Sandbox Mode method of cards. However, it's not so quick that I won't fast forward in the edit until we get to a stage where we're enacting Sandbox. Okay, so with about 5 cards left, what you're going to need to consider is actually your next steps when you reach Sandbox Mode. And that kind of affects your play, because if you don't have Advanced Ritual Art in your hand, it's perhaps in your graveyard, the same with Telekinetic Charging Cell, you're going to be needing to use the Magicat to bring that card back into your deck to allow you to play it for the first run-through of Sandbox Mode. And it's important to know that now, because you might want to stack your deck in certain ways if you don't have the right discard cards to get things like Dark Blade back into the deck. And it depends on your options, but sometimes with 4 cards left in the deck, it's actually worth going into Saryuya at this point and using its 4th effect, which allows you to basically draw the remainder of your deck, draw 4 cards, and then put 3 of them back in. So you can be like, oh, okay, I'll put the Dark Blade from my hand into the deck. That way I don't need to discard it and use maybe a card that I don't have. Usually, though, the way this deck stacks up, you've got those options there, and indeed in this run-through I do well. So I'm actually going to keep using the Synchro Desynchro until I've run out of cards. But just food for thought, not every playthrough is this the correct thing to do when you have 4 or less cards in the deck. So we've now in the situation where we have no cards left in the deck. And so our next step is to try and get Gale Dogra to the field. And Saryuya Skuldred is also our method for doing that. So we'll summon it here, activate its effect to allow us to summon a monster to the field from our hand. And again, this might be a situation where you might need a Monster Reborn or something like that in order to get the Gale Dogra here. Now it is here, though, we now need to get our Reprodocus, and fortunately the smoothest way to do this combo is simply to get rid of the 2 monsters that are already on the field and put it here. We'll use its effect, change the type of everything in the row to Psychic and not Divine Beast, and lastly Telekinetic Charging Cell on Gale Dogra. And now we have completed this step of Sandbox Mode. We're able to now mill cards from our extra deck at will. In fact, what I'm going to do initially is just mill all of the spare cards that I no longer need. So, Cyframe Lord Omega. What are we going to do? Well, first, it would be good of us to put the Dark Blade back into our deck. So technically, we could go into Advanced Ritual Art with summon out the YuGiOh. However, for this playthrough, I'm going to attempt to summon Zushin the Sleeping Giant. And it would actually be really pertinent if we could get Left Armor the Forbidden One on the field and do its effect before we're in the situation where we need to stack our Zushin back into the deck. So I'm going to discard it with this DDR, revive Gref, and then we'll use Monster Reborn, bring back the left arm. And now we'll use Effect of Omega in conjunction with Untess to get rid of Greffer. So, the left arm is there, and we can use Zushin, the Sleeping Giant, and put these tokens onto the left arm. If you don't know Zushin, the Sleeping Giant, one of the hardest cards to play in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! You need to reveal it in your hand 10 times on a level 1 normal monster, and only then are you able to special summon it from the hand. And one of the ways of doing this is basically to keep putting it back into the deck and drawing it again, and that way it counts as a separate copy of Zushin. And because essentially once you've used its effect, you have to reveal it, and if once it goes back into the deck, it's then face down again. So you can keep doing that, and in order to do that as part of this first run through of the Megalith, I'm actually going to use Overdone Burial, discard one copy, and again, revive a copy, and it doesn't really matter what I go for here, because once again, use Gale Dogra, get rid of Omega, and recycle the Intess. So now we're in the phase where we can use effect of Psyframe Lord Omega, put that Zushin back into the deck, and now we'll go into Advanced Ritual Art. So Megalithos coming, get rid of the Dark Blade, summon Ock, effect, draw our copy of Zushin, we discard our other copy of Zushin, and now we can use the effect to put another counter onto the left arm of the Forbidden One. If you watched our other duel, you'll know what's coming here. I'm just going to run it through with you again one more time before we'll speed it up to the all-important summoning of Zushin, the Sleeping Giant. So, we now need to use Intess to get rid of our copy of Och. You know what? Just because I like things neat, I am just going to get rid of that Summoner Monk. Now we need to stack our deck back up, and the cards we're going to stack are the Dark Blade, the Megalith, Advanced Ritual Art, and the card we want to draw, Zushin, the Sleeping Giant. Now we're going to be discarding Herald of Arclight, allowing us to draw the Megalith and the Advanced Ritual Art. There we go, Herald of Arclight, Advanced Ritual Art. We'll activate Advanced Ritual Art. Get rid of Dark Blade, summon Orc. Do we want to draw? Yes, we do. Do we want to discard? Yep, the other copy of Zushin. And there we go, our fourth Zushin counter. And I'll rejoin you when that gets up to 10. And so you join me back here live as I play my last copy of Advanced Ritual Art. Play the Megalith, draw the Zushin. We'll actually discard something else like Strudo. And then we'll use this Zushin, get the 10th counter, and special summon Zushin, the Sleeping Giant, on my first turn by tributing this copy of Left Arm of the Forbidden One. Bang, on the field, there we go, and actually in record time as well. So I've been recording for about 25 minutes, and there was about 3 or 4 minutes of setup before that. So that's almost getting Zushin, the Sleeping Giant, with Sandbox Mode in time for your typical amount for a match duel. It's truly inspiring stuff. So this time, we're going to be trying to win using Destiny Board. And trying to do this with Sandbox Mode actually involves playing the combo slightly differently. And this is because Destiny Board is a trap card, and also, even with its support cards like Sentence of Doom, it takes more than one turn to win using Destiny Board. Why is that a problem? Well, the effect of Reprodocus only lasts until the end of your first turn. And so obviously when you press end turn, the Gale Dogra is going to revert back to being an insect monster, and the telekinetic charging cell is then going to be destroyed because it's an equip spell. And so that'll put you on the back foot. What we're going to be doing then instead is actually using a combo involving the Dark Magicians. And the Dark Magicians lets us play a trap card on our first turn. But rather than going into Destiny Board, the trap card we're going to be going into is DNA Surgery to convert all monsters in the field into a Psychic type monsters continuously. So this is going to be a continuous trap, always there, and that means that we can use Sandbox Mode turn after turn after turn. And this is partially why it's important to recognise how your playthrough is going 4 cards in advance of reaching this stage, because you're going to need to get DNA Surgery to the top of the deck in order to use the effect of the Dark Magicians. And the best way we have of getting a card to the top of the deck is using, where is it here, Plague Spreader Zombie. But if you didn't have Plague Spreader Zombie, maybe it was banished and you didn't have a copy of DDR to bring it back, then you're going to be having to use Saryuya Skulldread's effect. And potentially, if you've got Saryuya, you're also going to be wanting to put in Dark Blade to use the advanced ritual art on it. So you can see how these combos gradually get more and more built up, the more complicated they are, and you're going to need to think in advance. Usually, once you've got your loop running with Hyper Librarian, you are going to be able to play it, but you just need to take your time and think, okay, are the pieces in the right place as you get to having no cards in the deck? Let's see if I've managed it. What is the first step here? Well, in this instance, I think it is actually going to be the Saryuya, but it's not going to be for its placing the cards back into the deck effect. It's going to be for its ability to summon out the Gale Dogra. So we'll use its effect, and we'll summon Gale Dogra wherever it is in our hand. Boom. Dogra's on the field. And no, obviously this time, because we're not using Reproducers, it doesn't actually matter which column it goes in. Next move, going to be using the Plague Spreader Zombie. So we're going to put the DNA Surgery back, summon out the zombie. Next, Polymerization. So we're going to summon the Dark Magicians, and as part of the combo, and this is what's quite nice about it, we already have the Spellcaster on the field, so you're only going to need just that copy of the Dark Magicians in your hand, but again, if that's in your graveyard, you're going to need to somehow get that back using whatever materials you have in your hand. So, Dark Magicians now on the field. Now, next up, we are going to need to use any spell or trap card, and the one we're definitely going to be wanting to use here is DDR, and that is to discard the next piece in our jigsaw, Arcana Force 21 The World, and we'll get into why that's important in our next move. Apparently, we've only banished one creature, and that's Squeak Knight, which has a summon effect, which we're not going to enact. What we are going to do is use the Dark Magicians, draw our top card, which we know is DNA Surgery, immediately set it, immediately activate it, change everything to a Psychic, and that lets us use Telekinetic Charging Cell on our Gale Dogra, and so we are ready with Sandbox Mode. So what do we do from here? Well, usually what I like to do always just clean up that extra deck, so we don't need all of these in there currently, we just need our base few. Now, remember what I said about the Arcana Force 21? We're going to be reviving it and hoping that this summon lands on heads. It landed on tails. Okay. So what we need to do is summon it again until it lands on heads. We've got obviously a 50-50 chance, so now's a good chance for me to obviously use the Sandbox Mode loop, and this is why it's much better to use Sandbox Mode to try and do this combo rather than just playing it straight away, because it gives you the freedom of being able to destroy all your cards on the field, redo things over and over again until you get this right. So we'll fast forward until I summon this with heads. Okay, so summoning Arcana Force 21, using its effect. Heads. Brilliant. So, when this card is summoned and you toss the coin into heads, during your end phase, you contribute 2 monsters on the field, and it skips your opponent's turn, and it'll become your next turn. So essentially, you can then go into the battle phase, activate trap cards, do all these things that require you multiple turns in order to achieve. So you can stretch this turn count out, and now we're no longer playing an FTK deck, we're essentially playing a non-opponent playing deck. One of the really important things to remember, and I'll just demonstrate it for you right now, is that you are going to draw a card in your draw phase. So please don't just end turn when you get the 2 monsters here. Please put a card back into the deck for you to draw. And typically for this combo, the one you're going to be wanting to draw is Monster Reborn, because obviously you're going to need to keep feeding the world, as it were, in order to keep this combo running. So there we go. I'll put Monster Reborn back, and so just to show you that it's working, I'm going to end turn here. Get rid of Orc and Greffer. So because we've ended our turn, we're also going to need to get rid of pretty much every card in our hand, relative to how big it is normally. Because we're using the Sentence of Doom, we can actually just get rid of the spirit messages as well. And because we used YuGiOh the Timeless, we're going to have to go straight into our battle phase. But that's fine. We're not going to win in our battle phase, even though we can. We're going to go into our main phase too. So, the next step is that we want to try and trigger the Dark Magician's effect once again, because this can be used once per turn, the same as the world. So, we'll use Gale Dogra, put Omega, and one of the cards we discarded was Sentence of Doom. Now, we'll use Monster Reborn. We'll revive back, in this instance, Summon a Monk. There it is. And we'll use the effect of the Dark Magicians. And that allows us to play Sentence of Doom, and as well activate Sentence of Doom. We're not going to use its effect right now, but we are going to use its second effect to allow us to play a spirit message free of charge. We don't even need Destiny Board, the original trap card on the field, in order to use it. I'm going to use Dark Sanctuary, though, first. And what Dark Sanctuary does is it allows me to summon spirit messages as if they were real monsters. We'll start then with the E. We'll apply the effect of Dark Sanctuary, and that will put it here. Now, what we are going to do is put Monster Reborn, importantly, back on top of our deck. End turn, use the effect of the world, and we're going to use up YuGiOh and Summon a Monk. Now, obviously, we've drawn into Monster Reborn, so we're able to get back the Summon a Monk. And we'll use Omega to put the Sentence of Doom back on top of our deck. Now, the one misplay I have made is not actually destroying that YuGiOh before I fusion summon the Dark Magicians. If you do that, the Dark Magicians come here, and your field doesn't get as crowded. So it might actually be a bit of a challenge in order for us to use Destiny Board in this playthrough, but we'll see how it goes. Monster Reborn, Summon a Monk. Do I want to use the Dark Magicians? Yep. Do I want to set Sentence of Doom? Yep. Activate? Nope. Use its second effect. Play a spirit message, and the one we want this time is A. We're now going to end our turn, and the world is going to consume up Summon a Monk, and this time the Dark Magicians. Now, this is obviously going to be a little annoying, but we are perfectly able to do this, so we can activate Gale Dogra, use Omega to put the Sentence of Doom back in, use Monster Reborn to revive the Dark Magicians, and now we're going to have to enact Sandbox Mode's abilities in order to reuse the card that's on top of our deck. So we're going to have to go into Advanced Ritual Art, Dark Blade, and Megalith Arc. And then we'll use Omega once again with the Herald of Arclight, Advanced Ritual Art. So now we'll use effect, we'll get rid of this, we'll summon Ock. Two effects can be used. We want to only use the Dark Magician's effect. Now we want to use the Sentence of Doom, place a spirit message. That lets us place T. And again, we want to end our turn. Use up the effect of World, get rid of Ock and the Magician. And again, if you'd have put the Magician here to begin with, this wouldn't be the kind of cycle you're going through. But sometimes you're not in the position to be able to do that. So this is just showing you that version of the combo. Omega. Right. This is the key bit, where nearly all of our zones are full. Sentence of Doom. Monster Reborn. And we'll just repeat the process, and in fact, we'll use the Dark Magician instead. Was that a dull move? Maybe. So we can actually now go straight into Saralvis. Use the effects of the Dark Magicians. Set this. Bring back Monster Reborn. We're able to end our turn. Use the effect of the world. Get rid of the Dark Magicians and Saralvis. Now we can chain a Sentence of Doom. We might as well use its effect. Doesn't make much odds, because we can use it now to play H over here. And now is the simple matter of playing Monster Reborn on the Dark Magicians. So what I'm actually going to have to do is consume the world in order to use its effect for a second time. Why not? Let's just do that. The world, the Dark Magicians, and that lets us win with Destiny board and see this fine ad. So I hope that demonstrates the potential of Sandbox Mode in order to use and win with effects from trap cards in the battle phase, or things that are going to take multiple turns due to their effects. Well, congratulations if you've made it to this stage of the tutorial. And what I'm going to do to round this video off, which I'm sure if you're still here you're going to be interested in, are deck lists. Not only that I've used in this tutorial, but also those that I've used previously when enacting Sandbox Mode. And I'm going to start with this, the 30 card core that you're going to need pretty much every time you're going to enact Sandbox Mode. So your deck is going to be this core plus the extra deck core, and then you're going to fill that core out with things like 1-card warrior starters and counter hand trap cards. I'm fairly certain that you've seen all of these cards over the course of these tutorials, but if you haven't and you want me to explain kind of why these cards have been selected, comment down below and we'll get back to you on that. Now, this is for the in-person version of Sandbox Mode, and that version is slightly more consistent. And I spoilt it right at the beginning. The reason it's slightly more consistent is because you can play Prosperity in this deck because the core extra deck is only 12 cards. If you're running the online version of this deck, then you're going to have a 13 card extra deck by core, and that means that obviously you're not able to use that slightly limited version of Prosperity, which harms the consistency ever so slightly. So what I'm presenting to you here is actually the best or most consistent 60 card Sandbox Mode deck for summoning Zushin the Sleeping Giant and Sophia Goddess of Rebirth. And as you can see, we've filled out that core by playing a bunch of Warrior 1-card starters, including the Phantom Knights engine, as well as the ones I mentioned earlier. But we're also playing things like Crossout Designator and Magical Mid-Breaker Field, Called by the Grave, and obviously those hand traps that work with the Crossout Designator. Now, if I quickly tab over, I'll show you the 40 card version, which was in the second tutorial, and we can see it's much more streamlined. We're not playing those anti-hand traps. We're kind of hoping the opponent can't stop us, and we're ploughing through with the dual replay. So we're only running Sublimation Knight and Neospace Connector in this version, as well as 2 copies of Zushin to make the Sandbox Mode combo happen twice as fast. And for the last deck list, I'm going to be showing the Destiny board deck used in the third tutorial. And we can see it's obviously still quite streamlined, but also has many more cards in it just because of how many cards Destiny board takes up, as well as how many additional cards are needed to enact the trap version of Sandbox Mode. And so obviously the most consistent version of this deck, you'd fill this in with probably the Phantom Knights engine, as well as maybe things like Called By, just for a little bit of extra protection, maybe additional copies of Seravis as well, to stop the imperm. Now this deck is obviously, again, interchangeable in terms of running other types of alternate win conditions that involve trap cards or the battle phase, and one example I'm just going to flag here right at the end is Phantasm Spiral Assault. So this card, you can target this dragon if you control it, and if it's equipped with these 3 equip spells, and it destroys 3 monsters, then you win the duel. And so simply Use the trap card Give and Take to give your opponent one monster per turn using the effect of Dark Magicians to play it. And you're pretty much home and housed for activating Phantasm Spiral Assault without your opponent being able to do anything. That just about wraps up everything that I had to say, but if you think I've missed anything or have any questions, please ask me below. I hope you've enjoyed the Sandbox Mode series. I hope it comes back when we're able to reinvent it. But for now, stay tuned. We'll have some more interesting videos like this one coming up for you in the near future. Take care.